Back now at 8:10 this morning on today's Relationships, the Marriage Council. Every relationship hits a few bumps now and again, but what are those hot-button topics that create the most tension between you and your spouse? Judith Sills is a clinical psychologist. Hal Runkel is a marriage therapist and the author of Screamfree Marriage. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Timely advice. So this is great. We have a lot to get to. We did this survey online and asked people what are really the hot-button issues, and we'll get right to it. The first one had to do, and this is a big one for women, the issue of listening. This is one of our what one of our viewers had to say.
One of the things that drives me nuts is when you have to repeat yourself about the same thing over and over and over again. We call it selective hearing in my household.
Selective hearing. So the survey found 65% of women don't feel like their husbands listen to what they say. Judith, is there a difference between hearing and actually listening, being present?
Selective hearing is the norm, and you know what? It's mostly benign. Does not feel good to be tuned out, but it's the same thing we do with our kids. You're chattering on and on. You just got to get a signal when you really need his attention. It's a post-it. We are leaving at 11. Otherwise, you chat. His mind's on other things.
Well, but interestingly, there's a majority of men feel the same way in the opposite direction, that in fact their wives do listen to them. So this is really the difference between men and women.
Well, I hesitate with that, but it all depends on what you mean by listen. Does it mean you agree? Does it mean he obeys? Right? When people are saying he doesn't listen to me, what are they actually saying? That he totally disregards me, he dismisses me? Because another one you're going to get to on the survey says men feel like their wives are telling them what to do all the time.
Yeah.
Well, those are related. If I feel like I'm being bossed around all the time, it's a little more difficult for me to listen.
Was he listening if he wore the Hawaiian shirt anyway? That is the question.
That's the question. Interesting. You talk about that, and the percentages, 47% say yes, your spouse constantly tells you what to do. So this is a feeling that men do have.
Men have the feeling that they're being nagged, but what are they being nagged about? Because really, she's not really your mother. If she's nagging, do this, do that, isn't it because she's really saying, help me out? So what I try to say to the men I work with is basically this. Do you want to keep having sex? Because if you want to keep having sex, help her a little. It's very erotic to say to a woman, can I help you? Yeah. She wouldn't be nagging so much.
All right, so here's the issue with nagging. One of our viewers had something to say about that.
You repeat yourself.
I don't know if that's
Do you? I do? Really?
Yeah.
Really? No, I don't. No, I don't.
She does, actually.
Telling you what to do, nagging. I mean, but there's a cumulative effect to this, and it's sort of related to when a lot of men start to tune out.
Sure. You know, if I feel like I'm being asked to do this over and over and over, it puts me in a no-win situation. Because what if I genuinely can't do it at that time? Well, then if I say no, I'm just a jerk, right? But if I do it, then she might say, well, I wish I didn't have to ask you in the first place. Here's one thing my wife did. She stopped asking me to do something, whether it's the dishes or it was actually the bed. I was not making the bed, whatever. She just told me this. You know what? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not your mother. But when you don't make the bed, it makes it a lot harder for me to want to climb back in that bed with you.
There you have it.
And then she just walked out and left the room.
I got to get to this last one because I think this is such a big one. We'll put the results on the screen. We asked, do you ever feel confused about what your wife wants because she doesn't say it, rather she expects you to read her mind? 42% in the survey said yes all the time. 42% said sometimes. I feel, Judith, like this is a big issue between married men and women, is this idea of, are you taking the time to really figure out what's going on with me? And guys say, well, I mean, you didn't say anything. How am I supposed to know? And there's some truth on both sides of this.
There is truth on both sides, and it's a difference. She is scanning the relationship. And from that, she got the idea that you wanted a power saw for your birthday by something you said. He is not scanning. He has permission to be a little bit more self-absorbed, shall we say.
Right. But it's not even about more mundane things like that, right. But it also has to do with, what's really going on? How are you doing? What are you vulnerable about? What are you scared about? What are you nervous about?
And it's that fear of vulnerability that prevents us a lot of times from being direct.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I've been thinking about you all week and I really want you tonight, which I'm not really saying to you, but you understand. Or it's, I've been struggling with this and I just let you know, when you leave the dishes in the sink, it makes me wonder if you think I'm a maid or a wife, which is something my wife told me last week.
You can encourage a woman and say, help her, help him make you happy. Let him know. He really doesn't get what makes you happy unless you tell him clearly, directly, and maybe more than once.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
he feels good about it.
One great piece of advice is that idea that, you know, you're making space for your spouse in the relationship. You're always sort of making room for that other person. So anyway, thanks very much.